Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. We'll start with Defense Coordinator Lance Anderson. If you want to raise your hand in the participants tab, we'll call on you and go straight to questions. We'll start with Daniel Krams from the Stanford Daily.
I actually don't have a question at the moment, but I think Jacob has his hand up.
Perfect. We will go to Jacob then.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Coach. How's it going?
Great, Jacob. How are you?
I can't complain. Glad to be asking you about football, and I'm sure you're glad to be talking about it. I wanted to actually begin with how would you describe where you and the coaching staff are right now in terms of preparing yourselves and preparing the team for this season, and what your kind of feeling is about where the guys are right now in terms of the same thing?
So first off, as a coaching staff, these past few months have given us a lot of time to meet and talk, watch a lot of football, evaluate what we've been doing, looking back and like, what do we need to add? What do we need to tweak? What do we need to adjust? And so I think we've got a really good plan going in. And also these past several months too, we've had a lot of Zoom meetings with the players, which we normally don't get. So it's been great just meeting with them, talking football with them, talking X's and O's, answering questions, things like that. So what I hope happens is that all this time that we've spent meeting carries over to the field. Now we are ready to take that next step, and that is to get on the football field and actually physically go out and play football and execute some of these things that we've been talking about in all these meetings. So that will be the next step, and that will be the real test to see how we do when we get on the field. So Jacob, I think our guys are well prepared mentally, and we'll see when we get on the field, where they are physically. But we've got a lot of good guys that are very dedicated. I think they've done all that they can to stay in shape and get themselves ready to play. So I'm excited to get on the field with them.
Yeah, quick follow-up on that. The fact that this season is starting later, that you've been able to do things with the guys that you don't normally get to do, what are your expectations of where you're going to see that on the field helping the guys out?
What I really hope that it does is that our guys are further along mentally than what they normally are. I think that they will have a better understanding of a lot of their individual techniques, some of the fundamentals, some of the reasons behind the things that we do, why we do what we do, why we teach these things the way that we do, how their job fits into the rest of the defense. So I'm really hoping that will allow these guys to get on the field, have a better understanding of exactly what they're doing, and that will allow them to play faster.
Next question will come from Scott Reese.
There we go. We're unmuted. Lance, good to see you.
Great to see you too, Scott.
So I actually had a different question, which I guess I can follow up with, but just going back to your first answer, talk about having all this extra time to sort of pour over tape and get together and assess everything you guys have been doing without, giving away state secrets. Is there anything you can tell us in terms of what you've learned and maybe things that you look to do differently or the same or that sort of thing?
Again, trying to be brief with all that and not get into too much detail and bore you with little details. Again, I think we went back and we looked back at things we'd done several years ago, things that we were successful with then. And I think there are a few things that maybe we had taken out of our package that were productive for us that we need to get back in. I think bottom line and what we want is our guys to have a great understanding of whatever it is that we are doing, that they know exactly what they're doing and that they can play fast. So in some areas, we cut a few things out. We've simplified a few things. We've, added a few things. And just for example, scheme-wise, I thought last year we got to the point where we were really heavy on a lot of our coverages where we were like man or match type coverages. And there are some times that we need to play more true vision zone. There are times that we maybe need to help, whether it's, be able to give the corners a little bit of a relief and not man coverage, down after down, or some of the other DBs. So we've tried to incorporate a little bit more of that this year that, might give us a little bit more variety, but still allow us to simplify so that we know exactly what we're doing and that we can play fast.
And again, maybe this is a follow-up for 3 weeks down the road when we get closer to actually playing. But I know I personally was really looking forward to seeing those young middle linebackers last year, Ricky Miezan and Jacob Magnan-Farrar. We got them for about half a game. Where are they in terms of, are they both 100%? And what do you expect from these guys? Are they ready for prime time to be big-time inside linebackers?
I think, those guys that you mentioned, along with, Curtis Robinson, that now is his second year at inside linebacker, in addition to those guys, Lavani Damouni, we've got some guys who are physically very talented at that position. Again, it's hard for me to speak to the physical part of it right now until we get on the field and see what they can do.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what I've been really impressed with, it's been great just sitting in these meetings, and especially where, hey, I can go into the inside linebacker meeting and hear Coach Sanders coach guys and hear those guys respond. And then you really get a good understanding of kind of where those guys are mentally, what they understand, what they don't understand. And it's been, really good in the off season to see that. And what I've seen from those guys is I've seen them really develop in their understanding of the defense and where their run fits are, what their pass pickups are and why. So I think all those guys are way ahead of where they were last year mentally. And now we just got to get on the field and see if it really does carry over.
Yeah.
Next question is from RJ Abadia with the Bootleg.
I think you're muted still, RJ.
How about now?
There we go. I got you now.
You guys have some choices to make at corner, safety, and nickel as you go into this training camp. Can you talk about some of the names who you expect to stand out or to play a role in those competitions? And then how many of those guys have the versatility to compete at multiple spots?
Okay, great question. Let me start. So let me with corner to begin with. I think Caillou Kelly played well last year as a true freshman, but he is just a second-year player, so he's still competing with guys. Nick Toomer and Zarin Manley are very physically talented guys. They've got the length that you look for in a corner. They're both fast. They're both athletic. Ethan Bonner is healthy now, so I think he's got a chance to compete there. Again, we're looking forward to, in addition to those guys, hey, what can Trajan Butler do? I mean, he's a veteran. He's been in the system for a few years now. Salim Turner Muhammad last year was banged up a lot as a freshman. He'll get a full opportunity to compete. Even the freshmen like Omari Porter and Brandon Jones, very physically talented guys. We'll see if they can get in the mix there. So there is great competition at the corner position, and it is just wide open. So we've got to see those guys get a lot of reps and see how they separate themselves. At the safety position, Kendall Williamson, the few practices that we had in the spring, we thought he was playing his best football that we've seen since he's been here at Stanford. So we are very high on Kendall. Malik Antoine at the safety position has played a lot of snaps, and he's extremely smart. I mean, he could coach most of the positions in this defense at this point. He is he's a high football IQ guy, does a great job of making the calls, getting lined up. So we feel really comfortable with those guys. I think guys like, Jonathan McGill will also compete at the safety position, Noah Williams, guys like that. As we move to the nickel position, Jonathan McGill got a lot of reps there last year. And you go back and you watch last year's film, and Jonathan played well. He's just, he's got a knack for making plays, and he has a good feel for playing the game. Sure, he might not be as big as you'd like, maybe not as fast as you'd like, but he has done a good job at that nickel position. But we know we got to rep some other guys there. And that's something that Coach Aquina does a good job, is really exposing a variety of guys there, because we know each week the matchup might be a little bit different. If our opponent has a really good slot receiver, maybe we need to put someone there who's better in man-to-man coverage. Maybe some weeks it calls for a more physical player. So that's why we're going to rep a lot of the corners there. Malik Antoine's played there. Noah Williams has played there. JJ Parson has played there. But we're also talking about getting like Ethan Bonner, Don J. Logan, Omari Porter, Brandon Jones reps there. So we have a lot of versatility at that nickel position. And so then, to your very last question, yes, I think there are some guys who have some position flexibility, especially maybe it's between corner and nickel, it's safety and nickel. And, we've seen guys like Kendall Williamson that came in as a corner and now has kind of, found his role at safety. Every year that kind of happens with the young guys as well. We'll see how it evolves from there. But I think we definitely have some guys that have, flexibility to play different positions back there.
Next question will come from Troy Clarity.
Coach, great to see you. Just looking around college football as the season has gone over the past few weeks, it seems like the quality of tackling hasn't quite been up to snuff, at least as far as you might expect. And I'm sure the reasons for that are pretty obvious given the situations that all these teams are in. But looking ahead to when Stanford is on the field, what are some things that can be done to perhaps prevent some of the tackling issues that other teams seem to have been struggling with so far this year?
That's something that we've been talking about as a staff. And I think just in general, Troy, and I watched some of these early season games, and it just looks like some teams are way more prepared than others, where, some seem to tackle well, others really struggle with that. You see all kinds of, special teams mistakes, specifically defensively, you see some blown coverages, things like that. So we are going to put a big emphasis on, we have got to be prepared. Physically, mentally, whatever it is, we've got to be as prepared as we possibly can. Back to just specifically tackling. Coach Shaw's mentioned it as well. He's going to build in some periods in practice where we can tackle. We've got to make sure we're building things into individual, where we're working on those tackling fundamentals so that we come out and we tackle well. We've got to make sure whatever it is that we do on defense scheme-wise, that our guys are comfortable with it, they're familiar with it, that they can run that without any hesitation. I think anytime you're in a situation like this, which is very unique, the number one thing we need on defense, we have to play with great effort. There might be some mistakes made, there might be a blown coverage, there might be a tackled miss. The best way to overcome that is to play with great effort. So that's what we're going to preach to our guys from day one, and we've got to play physical. We've got to play with great effort, and we've got to play physical on every snap. That will help us overcome some of those mistakes. We hope there aren't that many, but we just know the nature of it. There's a chance there could be. So got to play hard.
Time for two last ones with Lance. We'll go to Rusty Simmons and then finish with RJ Abadia. Rusty, go ahead.
Coach, thanks for doing this afternoon. My first question is about the state and county protocols and kind of how you guys have had to navigate around that. Can you give me an idea of how creative you guys have been able to do that, get work done while you're adhering to the protocols?
I mean, that is still a work in progress for us. We're still waiting to find out exactly what we'll be allowed to do when we start fall camp on Friday. But we have tried to do as much as we possibly can. We are trying to work with the county, with the state, university, and just whatever the regulations are, we're trying to follow those to the very best of our ability and get whatever we can out of whatever we're doing. So a lot of the individual workouts we've been doing now, there's a real emphasis on just some of the movement, skills, maybe some individual technique and fundamentals. We're also creatively finding ways that we can really test these guys assignment-wise, whether it means lining up some bags or lining up trash cans and giving them different calls and having them execute their assignment, things like that. So yes, we have tried to be very creative, and we will continue to do that so that we can, be as prepared as we can be and get as much out of whatever it is that we're doing.
And this isn't so much of a follow-up, but just another question that I was interested in, if I have time. you guys played so many young players on your side of the ball last year. Do you see that as an advantage, a disadvantage? How do you look at that now that all these young guys have that experience and are coming back for a second year?
Well, going through it at the time, maybe it was somewhat of a disadvantage because some of the level we would have liked. But I hope now, in the big picture, I hope it's a positive. I hope that all these guys that got on the field, that had a taste of playing, felt what it's like to get on the field and play against Pac-12 competition. I hope that it has benefited them in their off-season preparation. I hope it'll benefit them when we get back on the field this fall.
Thanks.
You bet.
We'll finish with Lance with RJ Abadia.
Coach, you've had your share of battles against air raid offenses over the past few years. Washington State and USC is now running a version of it as well. I'm just curious, as you look back on the film, on the days when you guys handle it well, what are the boxes that are being checked versus the days when they've kind of got the better of you?
Good question, RJ. So I think the number one thing is it's easier to have success against that kind of scheme if you have the ability to generate some pressure in pass rush. And I don't mean just blitzing, because those teams that run that system are very good at picking up blitzes, getting the ball out. You've got to have some guys win one-on-one matchups. You've got to create a pass rush. You go back to some of the years that we played that well against systems like that. We've had some guys up front who are, putting some pressure on the passer. So that's one thing. Now, next, again, the advantage, I guess, of not going to a bowl, unfortunately, last year, we had a lot of time starting in December to really go back and look at a lot of things. And that's something that myself and a lot of the defensive staff, we took a look at. We looked at that, what Washington State had done with Mike Leach, the USC, so just studying that air raid, where they had struggled, what things gave them problems. And I think you've got to give them a variety of looks. You can't just give them a steady dose of anything. You saw week one, Mississippi State and LSU. You give them a steady dose of man defense. I mean, they're gonna find a way to exploit that. I mean, and that's what that system does. You give them a steady dose of anything. So you have got to create pass rush when you have those opportunities, but you've got to give them a variety of looks and coverages, and you've got to make them be patient. I mean, that's what you saw Washington do that a lot against Washington State over the years. You saw Arkansas do that against Mississippi State last week. So there are times you've got to just play with that 3-man rush, 8-man drop, and make them be patient as they move the ball, down the field. So we've spent some time this offseason studying that scheme, and I think we've got a few ideas that may help us in the future.
Thank you, Coach.
You bet.
All right. Thank